The Civil War changed everything, but many of its greatest heroes were left behind by history. Today, we bring their stories back to life, giving voice to the courage, sacrifice, and legacy they left behind. Number 1. Ulysses Grant. Before the Civil War, Ulysses Grant had left the Army and was struggling to make a living. But when war broke out, he returned to service and changed the course of history. Known for his calm focus and relentless drive, Grant quickly rose through the ranks. His victories at Fort Donelson, Vicksburg, and Chattanooga proved that he had both courage and brilliant strategy. As the war dragged on, President Lincoln placed his faith in Grant, making him commander of all Union forces. Grant didn't waste time. He launched bold campaigns, fighting battle after battle without retreating. His famous overland campaign pushed deep into Virginia, wearing down Robert E. Lee's army. Though the cost was high, Grant knew that persistence would lead to victory. One of his greatest moments came in 1865 when Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. But Grant didn't gloat. He offered generous terms to the defeated Confederates, urging healing instead of punishment. His grace helped begin the long road to reunifying the country. After the war, Grant became the 18th President of the United States, but it was his battlefield leadership, steady, fearless, and determined, that secured his place as a hero of the Union and the man who led the North to victory. Number 2. Robert Lee. Robert Lee was a brilliant military commander whose name became legendary during the Civil War. Though he opposed secession, Lee chose to fight for his home state of Virginia when the war began. He took command of the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia and quickly showed why many considered him one of the best generals in American history. Lee's strategies at battles like Chancellorsville and the Second Bull Run earned him admiration from both sides. His ability to outmaneuver larger Union armies kept the Confederacy alive far longer than many expected. Even in defeat, Lee showed grace and discipline, never turning away from his responsibilities. At Gettysburg, Lee launched a daring assault that ultimately failed, but his bravery and leadership never wavered. 2 years later, with his army surrounded and resources gone, Lee made the painful decision to surrender to Ulysses Grant. He did so with dignity, believing that peace and healing were more important than prolonging a hopeless fight. Though his cause was lost, Lee remains a complex figure, respected by many for his loyalty, leadership, and deep sense of honor. His legacy still sparks debate, but there's no doubt that his role in the Civil War left a lasting mark on American history. Number 3. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman is remembered as the most fearless conductor of the Underground Railroad, but her heroism didn't stop there. Born into slavery, she escaped to freedom in the North, then returned again and again to lead dozens of others to safety. But during the Civil War, she became something even more extraordinary: a spy, scout, and secret weapon for the Union. Tubman used her deep knowledge of Southern terrain to guide Union raids. One of her greatest moments came during the Combahee River Raid in 1863, when she helped lead Union forces in a surprise attack that freed over 700 enslaved people. It was the first military campaign in U.S. history led by a woman, and it was a stunning success. Beyond the battlefield, Tubman risked her life gathering intelligence, guiding troops, and caring for the wounded. She worked quietly and bravely, with no thought of fame or reward. Her work saved lives, shattered barriers, and brought hope to people who had long lived in fear. After the war, Harriet Tubman continued to fight for justice, supporting women's rights and helping those in need. Her courage and compassion turned her into a legend, not just of the Civil War, but of American freedom itself. Number 4, Clara Barton. When the Civil War broke out, Clara Barton wasn't a soldier. She was a clerk at the U.S. Patent Office. But when wounded soldiers began flooding into Washington, D.C., she found her true calling. With no formal medical training, Barton rushed supplies to the front lines and began caring for the injured with compassion and determination few had ever seen. She worked directly on battlefields like Antietam, often risking her own life to reach those in need. Soldiers called her the angel of the battlefield. Clara didn't wait for permission. She went where she was needed and built trust with doctors, generals, and the wounded alike. Her efforts helped change the way military medicine was seen and practiced. After the war, Clara Barton wasn't done. She led efforts to identify missing soldiers, contacting thousands of families, and organizing lists of the dead. In 1881, she founded the American Red Cross, bringing disaster relief and emergency care to communities across the country. Clara Barton's bravery didn't involve bullets or bayonets, but her courage saved lives just the same. She turned compassion into action and proved that in war, heroism can come with a bandage and a kind heart. Number 5, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. Before the Civil War, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain was a college professor with no military experience. But when duty called, he joined the Union Army and became a legend. At the Battle of Gettysburg, Chamberlain commanded the 20th Maine Regiment, stationed on the far left of the Union line at Little Round Top. Facing wave after wave of Confederate attacks, his men were running low on ammunition and exhausted. Instead of retreating, Chamberlain ordered a bold bayonet charge down the hill. The surprise move broke the enemy's momentum and saved the Union flank, helping turn the tide of the battle and possibly the entire war. He was wounded 6 times in later battles, but kept returning to service. After the war, he was awarded the Medal of Honor and later became the governor of Maine. His leadership, courage, and calm under pressure earned him the respect of both his men and his enemies. Chamberlain's story shows how an ordinary man with no combat training became one of the most celebrated battlefield heroes of the Civil War, through quick thinking, bravery, and a strong sense of honor. Number 6, William Tecumseh Sherman. General William Tecumseh Sherman was one of the most feared and effective Union generals of the Civil War. Known for his fierce strategies, Sherman believed that to end the war, the South's ability to fight had to be broken. That idea led to one of the most famous campaigns in American military history, the March to the Sea. In 1864, Sherman led 60,000 troops from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia, cutting a path through the Confederacy. Along the way, his forces destroyed railroads, factories, and supplies, anything that could help the Southern war effort. Though controversial, his tactics helped shorten the war by making it impossible for the Confederacy to continue fighting. Sherman's march wasn't just about destruction, it was also about strategy. His army moved without traditional supply lines, living off the land and outmaneuvering Confederate forces at every turn. He struck fear into the South and helped bring the conflict closer to a Union victory. His legacy is complicated, but one thing is certain. He helped bring the Civil War to a close with determination, daring, and a relentless pursuit of peace through victory. Number 7. Thomas Stonewall Jackson. In the early days of the Civil War, one Confederate general earned a nickname that would echo through history: Stonewall Jackson. At the First Battle of Bull Run in 1861, as Union forces pushed hard against the Confederate line, General Jackson stood his ground without flinching. One officer shouted, "There is Jackson, standing like a stone wall," and the name stuck. Jackson quickly became one of the South's most respected military minds. His daring marches, surprise attacks, and deep knowledge of terrain helped Confederate forces win key battles. He was known for moving his troops faster than anyone expected, often catching enemies off guard and winning against larger forces. Despite his battlefield genius, Jackson remained humble and deeply religious. He believed he was fighting for a cause greater than himself, and he inspired fierce loyalty among his men. Sadly, his life was cut short when he was accidentally shot by his own troops at the Battle of Chancellorsville in 1863. Even today, Jackson is remembered not just as a symbol of Southern strategy, but as one of the most skilled commanders of the Civil War, one whose presence on the battlefield could turn the tide of a fight. Number 8. George McClellan. George McClellan was a brilliant organizer who gave the Union Army much-needed structure in its early days. After early defeats, President Lincoln placed McClellan in charge of the Army of the Potomac. His sharp eye for training and logistics turned scattered regiments into a disciplined fighting force, giving the Union new hope. McClellan's leadership at the Battle of Antietam in 1862 marked a turning point. Though not a decisive victory, it forced Confederate forces to retreat and gave President Lincoln the confidence to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. That moment reshaped the purpose of the war and the future of the nation. But McClellan was cautious, some say too cautious. He hesitated to follow up on victories, frustrating Lincoln and eventually leading to his removal. Still, many of his reforms in military structure and discipline lasted long after he left command. McClellan later ran against Lincoln in the 1864 election, but lost. Despite his political missteps, his role in shaping the Union Army and holding the line in critical moments remains an important part of Civil War history. Number 9. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass never held a rifle in battle, but his impact on the Civil War was as powerful as any general's. Born into slavery, Douglass escaped and became one of America's most powerful voices for freedom. When war broke out, he pushed President Lincoln to make the fight not just about preserving the Union, but about ending slavery. Douglass believed the war was a chance to finally deliver justice. He gave speeches, wrote essays, and met directly with Lincoln to demand the enlistment of black soldiers. His efforts helped lead to the creation of the United States Colored Troops, where nearly 200,000 black men would serve the Union cause. Two of Douglass's own sons enlisted, and he continued to champion their bravery and sacrifice. He showed the world that African Americans were not only fighting for the country, but for their rightful place in it. After the war, Douglass became a statesman and advisor to presidents. His legacy reminds us that wars are won not only on the battlefield, but also through courage, words, and unyielding belief in freedom and equality. Number 10. George Meade. When the Union Army desperately needed a steady hand, George Meade answered the call. In June 1863, just days before the pivotal Battle of Gettysburg, he was given command of the Army of the Potomac. With little time to prepare, Meade faced off against Robert E. Lee in what would become one of the most important battles in American history. For 3 days, Union and Confederate forces clashed in the hills of Pennsylvania. Meade stood firm, organizing defenses and reinforcing weak points with precision. His leadership on the third day, especially during Pickett's charge, was instrumental in breaking the Confederate assault and forcing Lee to retreat. Despite his success at Gettysburg, Meade didn't bask in glory. He quietly returned to duty, often overshadowed by more outspoken generals. Still, his victory helped turn the tide of the war, and historians credit him with saving the Union at its darkest hour. George G. Meade may not be a household name, but without his calm and calculated leadership, the story of Gettysburg and the war itself might have ended very differently. Number 11. Nathan Bedford Forrest. Nathan Bedford Forrest was one of the most feared cavalry commanders of the Civil War. Known for his lightning-fast raids, daring ambushes, and bold tactics, Forrest rose from private to lieutenant general in the Confederate Army without any formal military training. He led with instinct, often outwitting and outmaneuvering larger Union forces. His famous quote, "Get there first with the most men," summed up his aggressive strategy. Forrest's raids disrupted Union supply lines and created chaos deep behind enemy lines, earning him a legendary, if controversial, status. But Forrest's legacy is deeply complicated. After the war, he was associated with the early Ku Klux Klan, a fact that has overshadowed his military achievements. Though he later distanced himself from the group, his name remains a subject of intense debate. Historically, Forrest is remembered both as a tactical genius and a symbol of the war's bitter divisions. His story is a reminder that history is often complex, and that even heroes can have shadows. Number 12. John Brown. Before the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter, John Brown lit the spark that helped ignite the Civil War. A passionate abolitionist, Brown believed that slavery was a moral evil that had to be destroyed, by force if necessary. In 1859, he led a daring raid on the Federal Armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, aiming to arm enslaved people and start a rebellion. The plan failed. Brown was captured, tried for treason, and hanged. But in death, he became a martyr for the abolitionist cause. His raid sent shockwaves through the nation, terrifying slaveholders and inspiring anti-slavery supporters in the North. Even those who disagreed with his violent methods couldn't ignore the power of his message. Frederick Douglass called him a man of the purest integrity, and many in the North saw Brown as a symbol of unwavering moral conviction. John Brown never lived to see the Civil War, but his actions helped bring it on. He remains one of the most powerful and polarizing figures in American history, part prophet, part warrior, and entirely unforgettable. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.